Blue Jay LLC, is it on its way? We also answer your mailbag questions. It's a Mailbag Monday on the Roll Jays podcast.
Heads up, it's the Roll Jays podcast, the voice of the Creighton basketball fan. With your hosts, Jimmie Allen, Alex Drake, and Casey Matthews. Join the crew and meet CU players, coaches, and a whole lot more. Now, the Roll Jays podcast. Here's Jimmie Allen.
Welcome into another edition of the Roll Jays podcast. Jimmie Allen, Casey Matthews with you here. And we got a lot to get to. The Kentucky Wildcats have changed their athletic department to an LLC. Is that something that's on the way in college hoops? We're going to debate. Roster limits. They are incoming and they are lowering. What does that mean for Greg McDermott, this staff, and the future of Creighton basketball? Also, you've got to us a bunch of questions. We've got some answers for you. We're going to be happy to get to that. As you can tell, the two of us here today, Jimmie Allen, Casey Matthews, no Alex Drake today. Exciting announcement for Alex Drake coming. We'll wait till he gets back to do that. But happy for the Drake family for sure. Casey Matthews, let's get it started. I mean, obviously the big news comes out today that the University of Kentucky has filed an LLC for Mara Carey of the AP today, with college athletics bracing for the expected approval of a $2.8 billion antitrust settlement being the House versus the NCAA. The University of Kentucky is believed to be the first athletic department to convert a limited liability holdings company into their athletic department. Now, this does a couple of things, right? It braces for the House settlement that we know that is coming, that is going to be basically carried on by the SEC and the Big Ten, but everybody else is going to have to pay their shares. But this also gives you the ability to make student athletes employees without actually having them work for the university as well. I think this is brilliant. I think this is the first of many to come.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I think what I'm interested more is the business side of it. Of now that it is an LLC, what other options do they have in terms of can you invest in as an LLC, and then can any of those returns go to go to some of these athletes? Is there an opportunity for you now if you are part of if you're doing this and you have an employee that's late, and I say employee on purpose, a player, but that's late or isn't going to class or whatever. Are you able to cut them? Are you able to fine them? Are you able to enact any type of financial discipline on them? I think there's a lot of different avenues and things that are really interesting with this. I think I really don't think this will be something that you see everywhere. I think you're going to see it from your really high level and high dollar athletic departments. I mean, Kentucky makes a lot of sense, with their basketball program. Yeah. I think you probably look at Ohio State as a place that would do this. Alabama, there are quite a few, but I really expect this to be kind of siloed to the SEC and the Big Ten, at least for now, and then see kind of where it goes from there. So I don't know. I mean, I got to read up on it a little bit more, but it's certainly intriguing, and you got to give credit to Kentucky for kind of leading the charge on this and not waiting for the House settlement and then going, making a change from there, but being really proactive.
The one thing that kind of made me cringe, I think it's great, and I think there's a lot of positives to it. The one thing that kind of made me cringe a little bit when I read this was there's been the idea floated around about venture capitalism coming to college athletics and investment companies. And that feels like this has that written all over it. And it's one thing for an athletic department to go out and ask for funds and donations to come in from fan bases or local companies or people, in my opinion, that could benefit from the school by being a community versus just a dollar amount. But this smells like there's a loan coming to the University of Kentucky sooner rather than later to help pay for certain things. Schools going into debt to pay for athletic departments feels really gross. And I know, say what you want about UCLA right now. Obviously, the Big Ten bailed them out hugely by accepting them into their conference because that school was on the verge of bankruptcy. And there's only 5 current athletic departments in major college athletics that are operating in the black. And that tells you a lot about where we are. Now, a lot of that is because, obviously write-offs and losses because of non-revenue gaining athletics, and it's the right thing to do. But excuse me, having big business into college athletics from a loan standpoint just feels like the wrong way to go about this.
But I guess explain more of what you mean there, because to me, I still think you're going to be under the under the rules of the settlement with the house. So
you are, but no, I'm talking about schools taking out massive multi-million-dollar loans to keep their athletic department afloat to pay athletes, and then having that because the only thing that happens when you go into debt is prices go up, right? So if you're a student, if you're a 16-year-old junior to be in Lexington, Kentucky, and your dream school is to go to Kentucky, the only way they're going to recoup those funds is through raising tuition prices, and that's happening already anyway. With the house settlement. Now, if you throw on top of that the schools going into debt to pay said athletes, and there's still former athletes suing certain schools, Kentucky doesn't fall into that list, but I just believe that there's going to be outside sources other than collectives and donors and fan bases that are going to be called upon to try to bail out some of these athletic departments. And if you're forming an LLC, you're protecting yourself from lawsuits, and you're probably looking for some money. So I really think that
I guess I kind of saw this more of like a way to raise money in like things like investing, things like real estate, but also having the opportunity now that it is an LLC to make decisions a little more freely without having to go through the school per se and get approval, all the approvals necessary from the institution. Now, if you are, go ahead.
That's something that I think is very dangerous, right?
Because, sure, but Jimmie, hold on, because
almost to a necessity, though, right?
Yeah, because to me, you're freeing yourself up because now you're the athletic department LLC, right? Whatever this thing's called. Now, like, look at, I think Kentucky's one of them, actually. I know Kansas is one that has dormitories, like specialized dorms and housing for their student athletes.
Yeah.
And specifically basketball or football. So if you are a school and you're an athletic director and you have this idea of, I want to create something like this at my school, and you don't have this type of LLC, the approval system, you're going through the institution. So that, to me, and if you are a part of the institution itself and not really worried about the athletics, you're a lot less likely to support something like this. And again, I'm talking really high level, not getting very detailed because frankly, I can't get real detailed with this because I don't know all the ins and outs. But I just know there's decision makers in the institution who don't necessarily want to see funds continue to be poured into athletics.
Sure.
So by doing it this way with the LLC, having the ability to raise their own money and now say, hey, you know what, we're going to build a state-of-the-art dorm for our basketball players, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, now, this is very much a church and state thing. That's what you're seeing here. It's twofold. It's universities trying not to pay their the education portion of universities trying not to pay their athletics bills and having them pay for themselves while still getting the benefit of an athletic department. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I think it's all of these things included. But as far as what I was talking about with the loan stuff, like for a school to be able to take out a loan, they've got to be able to show income. And if you want to take that loan out based on your athletics, you can't do that. You would have to have a separate filing entity. And to do so, that's where I think the LLC is coming into place. And yeah. I just think it's the first of many to come. I'm with you. There's been a discussion for a long time about splitting of college athletics and mainly around football, right? Like the top, it's in legislation now. The top 80 schools that are willing to put, I think it's like $25.5 million into their revenue sharing just for football would split off and be its own entity. And obviously Kentucky falls firmly into that discussion. And if that is the case, if it's hey, we're going to split from the NCAA, this is no longer college athletics, this is the NFL light, and these are now pro athletes, to your point, employees, you have to do this. You can't have them continue to be associated with as a student athlete because they're just not anymore, especially for the money that's being thrown around at places like Kentucky, at places like Kansas. And frankly, I think a lot of people probably would want Creighton to be in that discussion as well. And that's another interesting debate too, because we've talked about the benefits of the Big East schools not having money but not having to associate it with football. What does it look like when we're talking about big time college athletic discussions happening when you don't have a football program to help support and or draw in those eyes?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, that's where like we've talked about this together, and then also on the weekly show we've talked about the Big East stands to really benefit from some of this.
In theory, I mean, unless there's a big cutoff and all the money and all the power go to the football teams and the football schools, and you're just kind of left holding the bag. I mean, it could still benefit the Big East, but it could leave them in a really, really a bad spot too.
Yeah. Well, it's like what we when we had Coach Huss on, and like he was saying, like it'll benefit the Big East at first, and then the SEC, the Big Ten, maybe a little bit of the Big 12. They'll find a way to change the rules to benefit them again. But at first, the Big East does stand to benefit from this because we don't have football players that we have to pay.
Yeah, the way things are now, for sure.
Right, and so it will be interesting to see, how it plays out. Let me ask you this, Jimmie: if let's just create a scenario where the Blue Jay LLC does get created, and you can
only hypothetical.
I wouldn't put it past Coach Mack and Coach Huss eventually. Sure. I guarantee they're thinking about something creative. But if there's just one thing, if you could do it for Creighton athletics, and listen, we're a basketball podcast, so for Creighton basketball, what would you do, like with this money?
That's a great question, right? Because I mean, when you look at what Creighton has from a facility standpoint, they're very, if not the top of the Big East, very close to the top of the Big East. I think it would be, the training facility's pretty top notch. You obviously have one of the best arenas in the entire country. I think it would have to go into just paying for players. Like, how do you continue to compete with St. John and overtake the Big East? And I think one of the ways to do that is to have the biggest checkbook. I mean, the highest paid football roster in the country just won a national championship.
Yeah,
take that for what you want. And again, and I think a lot of this, and we've talked a lot about on my radio show about how bad this year's college football playoff was, and then you want to talk about this year, and then all 4 1 seeds, and then 7 of the 8 final Elite 8 were 1s or 2 seeds. Is that a trend? Or is that just this season? Because it's not like we haven't seen it happen once before, right? And there wasn't an NIL or a transfer portal discussion happening at that time period in 2008. So that's what I caution the people making these decisions, specifically about the college football playoff and the NCAA basketball tournament, talking about expansion, is, okay, was this year bad, or is this a one-off of a decade that we're not going to see again for 10, 15, 12 years? And I think that's something that the people making these decisions have to worry about, not being knee-jerk reactions. Is this might not be the norm. It just might be what's happening now.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. It's the whole topic is fascinating, and we could break it down from so many different angles. But to say changes on the way and already taking place is a pretty big understatement.
Yeah, it's already here for sure. Speaking of being here, roster limits are now in place for college basketball. 15 spots available in men's and women's basketball. Okay, so were you surprised to see that they made the exact same roster limit for men's and women's basketball, considering they're very, very different sports?
No, and again, this is one of those topics where, like, I think I understand it, but the whole idea of Title IX, I think you need to be pretty consistent there in terms of rosters, because I think if you don't, then you've got to find scholarships in other sports that would equal out, and that's where I don't know. I honestly don't have a real educated opinion on that, other than my thought would be that Title IX would kind of create a scenario where it has to be equal because it's the same sport. The roster thing, go ahead.
Yeah, and to me, Title IX kind of feels like it's going to be the one casualty of all of this, right? I mean, especially from the football standpoint, is the way you've been able to navigate and make Title IX work in this day and age was you have to pay, since the scholarship is the exact same for the pole vaulter at Iowa State as it is for the quarterback at USC, that makes them equals, right? Now, you have these LLCs, you have these athletic departments, you have name, image, and likeness showing you the difference in the value that they're bringing into the school. And it really feels like, albeit it's legislation, it's legal, and it's brought down from the Supreme Court. It kind of feels like Title IX is going to be one of those casualties to what college athletics was. And I feel like that's only at in certain places, right? I mean, when you have like women's basketball at South Carolina and Tennessee that dwarfs most of the men's sports on campus at UConn, obviously that's probably the second biggest sport on that school's campus. I just don't know how you can continue Title IX the way it is now. And I say that from a standpoint that you better fix that, because I think it's very important to keep that status quo and continue to say, no, it's the exact same value when you have revenue driving in that proves it's not.
Yeah. No, you definitely have to look at it, and you have to make sure, like if you're, I mean, I guess I would say this, like there's some benefits to Title IX and things
For sure.
that, and like anything else, right? Like there's parts you agree with, parts you disagree with. I think from this standpoint, you're probably going to continue to have this type of, I don't know if legislation is the right word.
Yeah.
But you're probably still going to continue to have this. And I think it's right. I mean, I think like, you don't want to get into where you're, 7 scholarships in women's basketball, but you have 10 or 12 in men's. I just don't know where that would really make a lot of sense. Now, what's interesting though with this legislation is that if you opt in this House settlement, and now you can start to do revenue sharing and pay your players, the roster limit is going to be 15 for those teams. But what's going to be interesting is that the scholarships, from what I understand, change to where they're not. It's like in basketball right now, it's all or nothing. You either get a full scholarship or nothing.
Yep, same in football.
So from what I understand, when they do this, when this goes into place, it's going to change to where now you can do partial scholarships in basketball. I don't know if that's with football or not. That doesn't really matter to us, but
yeah. So here's the reason: is you had football teams with 135 guys on them, with 105 with the 85 scholarship limit. They were using NIL basically as a de facto scholarship for those players, and they were stockpiling talent.
Right.
And I'm assuming the same things were happening in college basketball around the country in certain spots as well. So it's unfortunate because, and I know Coach Mack talked about this week, that they're going to save that one roster spot for Joshua Townley-Thomas because he's earned it and they feel like he deserves that. But also it's going to be interesting to see how that gets handled too, because the NCAA ruling on grandfathered in scholarship or grandfathered in players came out too. And Coach Mack may just end up giving Josh a scholarship and letting him go to school for free, which I think would be great and definitely earned because he promised it to him. But how do coaches now navigate the, hey, I jumped in the transfer portal because there wasn't a spot at my school, but now I'm a grandfathered in student and I left before this ruling came down, and I could just be an extra body on your bench and it doesn't count against you? That's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
No, it is for sure. I think when you really break this down, this is stuff where, I think it's fascinating to see where this goes, because your conferences and schools that don't opt in are, when you really break it down, like a lot of them can't, because they need, like so with the roster limits now, you're eliminating walk-ons. Okay.
Yeah.
Where you could have, because you can only have 13 scholarships before, right? So you could have 13 scholarship players and 7 walk-ons if you wanted to. Well, in those situations, those walk-ons are paying tuition.
Right.
And so those schools that need those bodies to pay tuition, now if you opt in, you don't get that.
Right.
So and that's in some situations why a lot of them can't opt in, because you're going to lower your enrollment immediately by doing that. And so what I guess why it's interesting to me is that it's going to really and it's already obviously the have and the have-nots, but that separation between your big time schools, your Power Fives, and even some conferences that are quote unquote mid majors, between your quote unquote low majors, it's just going to grow even more to where, like, I just see it coming, man, in a couple of years where there is no NCAA tournament like we know it, where it's, it's separated. And, as a college sports fan, I hate a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I really do.
The one thing I'm going to be intrigued by is how do you go down the like, I just don't see any situation in which you don't have 1-2 reserve spots for injuries, because we've seen a season where a team, name the sport, has just been riddled by injuries, and it's caused them their entire season, even without roster limits. Now you're putting yourself in a situation where you're limiting the bodies that are available. I mean, it's not they're treating it like pro sports, but the problem is you don't have a waiver wire in college athletics. You don't have free agents that are just sitting out in the wings getting ready to be picked up. You don't have a G League in college basketball with guys that are out there getting reps. And I'm intrigued to see what happens the first time somebody is hindered by making the postseason tournament. And I've been adamant about this on my radio show. I think what we saw in Las Vegas this year with the Players Era Festival and tournaments with NIL in it, you're gonna start seeing, in my opinion, the national championship also have a purse at the end of it as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but I would agree. You're going to have to start doing that. I mean, again, it's just another thing I would just hate. But I still think the 15 spots is plenty in terms of having spots for injured players. What it comes down to though is like, and that's where recruiting and who you're paying and how much and those sorts of things become important, because can you have a roster of 15 guys that are making good money and happy? Probably not.
No. But I don't think you could do that at Duke. I don't think you can do that at Kansas. I don't think you can do it at Creighton.
No, not if you're bringing in guys that you feel like if your main player went down, you could have somebody that comes in off the bench and be okay.
Gives you a run, yeah.
Long term, like it's not at all. So we'll see.
We've turned these Monday shows into a mailbag show where you get your questions in, and we are going to answer them. And we thank everybody that has reached out and asked questions and kept our topics going. We'll go to the mailbag now and get to your questions. Joe reached out and said, based off what you guys have seen in the offseason, pickups from the Big East teams, how many bids do you think the Big East will get this year in the NCAA tournament? Joe, I'm sorry, did I say Joe? It was Peter. I apologize. Peter came in with that question. And I think
is that a real question, Jimmie, or is this did Jimmie actually want?
No, this is Mr. C Mathematics on Twitter. He tweeted at us last week, and I apologize we didn't get the tweets posted this week. But I think a lot of people felt the Big East got slighted last year, and more team. I thought more teams from the Big East should have gotten in as well. I think Xavier's going to see an uptick in talent this year. Obviously, Pitino's already done what he's been doing since he became a head coach in college basketball and just refilling talent. Obviously, Creighton is going to be a top 25 team preseason. UConn and Marquette will probably just be reloaded. I mean, a lot of people feel like UConn has the best transfer portal class in the entire conference. We know what Shaka Smart is, and that's 5.
Because you're counting Xavier. Right.
Yeah, I counted Xavier. I think all 5 of those teams are in. I'm really intrigued by what Chris Holtman has done at DePaul. Are they going to be able in year 2 to make a jump to get to the NCAA tournament? I doubt it. You know how I feel about Shaheen Holloway. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in the entire country.
I cannot wait. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Till when you become the co-host of Pirate Vibes with Ryan, because there might not be a bigger Shaheen fan,
aka the Shaheen Holloway fan club.
Yes. I mean, what you didn't talk about Georgetown. I actually think Georgetown did a good job, and
I think
they lost some talent.
I was just about to say, but I think they're going to be they have the potential to see the most improvement, I think. But how do they overcome what they lost is a question a lot of teams are having to answer this at this time, right? And that's why with the roster, back to the roster limits just for a second, like how do you manage your roster now? Like when you don't have the ability to have as many spots as you wanted. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I think obviously your main three, St. John's, UConn, and us. Marquette to me is a mystery because they just lose so much.
Yeah.
And the guys that are coming up, you just don't know enough because they don't do the transfer portal deal. Now, that's a whole other topic. There's a big part of me that loves what they're doing because they're really betting on, we're going to go after these high school kids and have a better shot at these elite high school players. They just got another commit 2 days ago. And these elite high school kids, because we're all in on them from an early standpoint rather than waiting until we need just to fill a spot. And then the bet is that, okay, if we invest in these guys now and we do a good job when they're here on our campus, we're not going to lose guys either. So
seeing that with Ty Davis and Jackson McAndrew, right?
Well, for sure. But I mean, I think they're a little different, but so Marquette is intriguing to me.
Because they have ties to Mac. Is that why you say that?
Well, no, I mean Marquette's situation is different because I think they're recruiting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Jackson ties.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just because they are really recruiting elite high school players and a little bit of international as well. But anyway, so I think Marquette's interesting. I'd probably pencil Marquette in right now. I agree with you on Xavier. I think Xavier's done a really good job.
I thought they should have made the tournament last year too.
Yeah, but now this is a whole new deal now, new staff, new roster.
I know.
But I think they've done a good job. I love their transfer. Is it Malik Moore from Montana?
Yeah,
I love him. I think Georgetown has done a really good job, and I think, gosh, man, I think I would put them right now on that same line as Xavier, where it's like kind of on the bubble. But I think that's where I would stop. But just because historically, I don't think we're going to get in, 7-8 teams. I don't. I do believe that the floor of the Big East has risen. I don't think you have a team right now that I can tell that like God.
Well, I mean, we all got to say that Villanova's going to be improved with Kevin Willard, right? Like I don't think anybody's even debating.
But
that.
What I was saying was besides Seton Hall, I just don't see a team that is like not going to be able to handle the Big East. Sorry, Brian. Sorry, Jimmie. But I do feel like even Butler's done a really good job in the portal. Providence has. So it's like, if you're just looking at it on paper, I think the league's going to be better in terms of that. There's going to be more parity in the league.
I think it's going to be really. I think they get 16 then. To answer Peter's question.
Yeah, I'm going to go 5. And I think it's going to be between Xavier and Georgetown. But I'm historically bad at this stuff. So if you're putting bets in on me,
so 3. There's going to be 3 teams.
Yeah, you're wasting your time. But I think 5.
Billy Blue 63-4 on Twitter wants to know, Pop Isaac seems like he really fit into Creighton's system. Obviously, at the massive explosion against Kansas, why do you think he ultimately left CU? Is it just down to money, or was there something else? Listen, I mean, I don't think Pop was very shy about not like really fitting in Omaha. I mean, even when he was sitting on the bench, he was wearing non-Creighton gear clothes, and I think he was a good teammate. I mean, he was there for every game. He was supportive and seemed to be a good teammate to the guys around him. I just don't think it was a fit for his personality with the city of Omaha and Creighton as a whole. Obviously, it was a fit in Mac's system. I don't think anybody could debate that. He was an elite scorer, and it worked out well when he was out there. I just don't think he was in love with Omaha. I don't think he was in love with the Creighton situation. And listen, and I think that's what makes the transfer portal great is – you from afar, something may seem like a fit to you, and if it doesn't work out, I think you should have the ability to leave. And I think Pop is a much better fit at Ole Miss, and I think it'll work out well for him.
Well, I thought he was going to Houston.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, he did. Didn't he? I was. Yeah. He was.
It was rumored.
It was rumored that he was going to Miss. You're right. Yes, I apologize. Yes.
No, it's fine. This is an interesting one for me. I think that having the game he did against Kansas.
Yeah.
leads you naturally into a conversation that you want more money. I think that's human nature.
It's the way of the world now.
Yes, but however, when your season ends because of an injury that you have to have surgery on, and you had the same surgery the year before on the other side, if, again, this is a business now. If I'm building a roster and I'm paying players what they're making now, I don't know that I'm comfortable paying somebody even more money than they were making coming off of another deal like this where they're having an operation, right? So this to me becomes a math game and becomes a weighing the pros and cons relative to injury and how much trust you have that you can hold up physically. And especially when you're in a place where you don't have to take that risk.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
To steal a line from a local football coach, the desperate team sets the market. And I 100% agree with that statement, because even if you do love Creighton, let's take Creighton out. Let's say you're the point guard at UTEP and you love El Paso and you it's your dream school and you wanted to be there, and you play Texas in a non-conference game and you absolutely go off for 30 points. I promise you that Cal Berkeley is going to call you the next day with a bigger offer than UTEP is willing to offer you. Now, if you're in a different situation, you're not happy where you are, and you get that money, 99 people out of 100 are going to leave and take that offer. And when we talked to Ryan Kalkbrenner the other day, I guess it was like 2 months ago now, but when we talked to Kalkbrenner, like, he openly admitted that, teams and people came calling. I was happy where I was, and I didn't think I could be happy somewhere else. That's a conversation every adult in this world's had about a job that they're at. You may be happy, you may not be happy, but it's the devil you know better than the devil you don't, right? And if you're happy where you are, you got to put a dollar amount on what that means, because there's some people, like, if Dana Altman and Phil Knight come calling, it's probably a pretty large check that's coming your way. Now, does your happiness match that dollar amount? That's a conversation a lot of people are going to have. Yeah,
no, it's just the way it works, right? I mean, you get older and you start your career and you got choices to make, man. And it's all, it's obviously the finances is a big part of it, but there's more, as we know, right? There's more to that story in terms of, in terms of basketball style of play, where you're living, right? There's a lot to it. I think we can all agree on this. Like, we wish Pop the best and hope he has a great rest of his career and he stays healthy, at Houston. But unfortunately, it didn't work out here long term. But I think he gave it his all while he was a Blue Jay, and that's all you can really ask.
Yeah, and not to make a positive out of his injury, but I think a lot of guys grew by not being a starter at the beginning of the season, or not having the role they had at the beginning of the season, and just kind of being thrusted into that situation. No coaching the staff in the world wants to go through that, but that's going to pay dividends 2 or 3 years down the road. Like, Jackson McAndrew, the minutes he got, is going to pay off mightily for Creighton next season. Like, and I'm talking 2027, not 2026, just because of the minutes. You can't put a value on the minutes that he got. And that was one thing. And Ty Davis's interview is going to drop tomorrow. Make sure you check out the Roll Jays podcast on the Big East Energy Network for that as well. It was really great to catch up with Ty and got his thoughts, but he just talked about openly about how much Jackson appreciated the fact that he got those minutes and how much better of a player he became because of it.
Yeah.
There's a difference between walking on the campus day one and being a starter, and midway through the season, well, I guess at the very early part of the season, finding out you have to be a starter because of injury.
No, that's a good call.
David P. on Facebook wanted to know, a lot of point guards and guards in general on Creighton's rotation. Ty Davis still on the bench, as we just mentioned. And then you add in Nick Graves into the equation. How do you guys think that the point guard situation is going to unfold? Listen, Nick Graves is being brought in to be the starter. I think little bit of a sneak preview of the Ty Davis interview. Asked him about that yesterday, and he said, listen, I know Nick's coming here to play, but that doesn't mean I'm going to work any less harder. And I expect to play this season, and I expect to play more. And that's what you want. I mean, you want competition. You don't want guys going, yeah, go ahead and recruit over me. I'll grab the bench and just hang out over here, and we'll be fine. No, you want Nick Graves to come in to push Ty Davis. You want Ty Davis to push Nick Graves. And I think Ty showed you last year, specifically at the end of the season, he hasn't even scratched the surface on his potential, and I expect him to be included into that rotation. So I think it's Nick Graves, Ty Davis as your 1 and 2 point guards.
Oh, for sure. And another little sneak peek. We're going to be I'll be sitting down with Nick Graves next week and do a little interview with him. So anybody watching this that has a question for Nick, shoot it to us on our Twitter, right here on YouTube, and I'll look at them all and see which ones I can work into the conversation. But my answer to this is the same. I mean, Nick is going to be the starting point guard, barring an unbelievable offseason from Ty. What I love is that there's going to be true competition, because I do think that on paper he is Nick's the starting point guard, and probably should be.
Ty has the advantage of being in the system for a year though too. That's going to be really.
I totally agree. And he played very well down the stretch.
Yeah.
I just I think in this transfer market, you're going to go get your starters probably that way. Now, I would love nothing more than for Ty to beat him out, and that's not to say
I agree,
negative at all. But if you have a player the caliber of Nick Graves coming in, and your up and coming sophomore beats him out, that's fantastic.
It's a great problem to have.
It's a problem for Trey Ziegler.
Yeah,
and to deal with that, but it's a good problem to have, because that means you do have 2 starting level point guards. But if I'm playing it out in my head, the way I see it happening is Nick starting and then Ty backing him up. And I think, I don't think 10 minutes a game is unrealistic.
Well, it's important to remember
in the 8 to 10.
It's important to remember what Max said a week ago, right? Is they want to get to the point where you have 8, 9, 10 guys playing 18, 19 minutes a game. Yeah. If that's the case, that's Ty Davis playing minutes when Nick Graves is coming off the floor.
What I'm more interested in seeing from a rotation standpoint is, if you're like, again, hopefully we continue to play the same way, we don't foul. But what if it ends up being where when Nick comes out, there's a slide where Josh slides down and handles some of those ball handling duties, because you just have so many
Josh
wings.
Dick, you mean, right?
Yeah. And that's what's interesting to me is,
you would be amazed if that's not in the cards somewhere, right?
Yeah, it probably has to be in some way, because I just think there's so much talent on the wings.
I was going to say, and Josh is just going to demand the ball that much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's intriguing, man. I can't wait for this season. I haven't been this excited in a bit, just because I think
how does it work?
Yeah,
that's the biggest question for me. Is
sure.
There are so many shooters on this team and so many athletes, and they're all so unique.
Yeah,
it's going to be like.
Well, and the other element of this too, Jimmie, is like, and I'm on record as saying this, like, I really believe this is Mac's last season.
Yeah,
and so to me, like the players have to understand that, and I think they do. That this could be, this could be. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing's official.
Yeah,
but this could be Mac's last year, and how do you want to send him out? If it is,
and listen, if this is his last year or not, may depend on what you just said there. Like, if he doesn't go out the way he wants to, does he run it back? Is Alan Huss okay with that? And obviously, and listen, they may be waiting for that, because I'll promise you this: Creighton finds a way to win a national championship this year. Greg McDermott is going to be on every golf course he possibly can anywhere else in the country next season, and not on a coaching staff somewhere. But as proud of a man as Mac is, and as in tune as Mac is, like I would be amazed if but he hasn't won the Final Four or the conference tournament discussion doesn't bother him just a little bit, because in this business you have to have an ego, right? Like, listen, on its face, it may not bother him at all. 10 years, what? And he's retired and done. Will be that one thing he said, wow, man, if I'd have came back one more year, could we have gotten it? And that might be a real conversation.
Yeah, and that's a different topic for a different day. But
sure.
Do I think that he wants that? Sure. I mean, listen,
you're not in this industry if you don't want it, right?
Well, right. I mean, I'm in my basement and I want it for him. So, like,
Yeah.
he wants it, right? But I also think, like, just knowing him, he cares a lot about other things too that he's already accomplished.
Yeah.
I mean, and things
he's
like,
the winningest basketball coach in the school's history.
yeah, but even go further than that, man. Like, look at what he's done with something like the pink out game here in Omaha and the impact that he has.
That's a great point.
On just helping families that are going through things, right? Like, you look at the guys that are graduating and having kids and building families and like building successful businesses, going on to play in the NBA. Like, his legacy is already cemented.
When he talked about bringing Alan Huss back and when he said carry on what we've built here, the first thing I thought of was the pink out game.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a huge deal to him and it's very personal to him. That would be one of the biggest travesties in the school's history if there was some way that went away.
Oh,
there's no way it would. But I know Greg McDermott wouldn't feel comfortable standing on the sideline while that happened. You know what I mean? So
for sure. Let me tell you this, Jimmy, and we can wrap. Is during my time, obviously one of my responsibilities was helping out with creating recruiting videos and stuff we would show. And we would bring pretty much every recruit would come into the film room. We'd sit down and show, video, to them. A lot of it was like a kind of like a hype video, a lot of highlights, a lot of stuff like that, right? Just to kind of get you excited about playing at Creighton. And more times than not, that video would be over and Mac would turn around and look at me and go, "Hey, play the pink out video." And it wasn't like you're not signing kids because we have a pink out game, right? But I think it was genuinely because he was so proud of what the community does here and rallies behind that event that it was his way of showing the family, like, you're not just coming here to play basketball. Yeah. You're coming here to be a part of a community that supports more than just basketball and stands for more than just basketball. And that was always a cool moment, except for the times where I didn't know and he put me on the spot and be like, "Hey, Case, show that pink out video," and then I'm scrambling.
Not the role. Yeah, it's not.
But it only happened once or twice. And I learned my lesson.
Sure.
Don't always have that ready, but it was cool, man. And I feel like he has so much pride in other things. That's what makes him special. That's why you can't be around the guy and not feel like you're worth so much more than you've ever felt like you're worth, because he makes you feel that way. And he makes you feel that way because he knows that there's so much more to it than just putting the ball through the hoop. But certainly he wants to win national championship, Final Four, all those things. But I feel like he's confident in his legacy. And no matter what happens this year, he's fine.
It kind of feels like it can only go one way, right? Like, I mean, it's only going to go, like, he can only improve it because it's definitely not going down.
That's a good call. Yeah, real good call.
This has been the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. Thank you to everybody that reached into the mailbag today, and we will do this every Monday. So thank you very much for all of your questions. Keep them coming. We will address them next week. It has been the Roll Jays podcast. Go follow the Big East Energy Network on YouTube and like and subscribe. Also, go follow us on Twitter at Roll Jays Podcast if you like this content. And we will see you again. Reminder, tomorrow the interview with Ty Davis will drop. So look out for that around 11 a.m. We'll see you tomorrow on the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors.